out of two people, who do you think is going to have more testosterone? One who breathes in toxic air all day and smokes, and the other one who breathes clean air. Pretty obvious, right? A lot of the air we breathe is filled with these toxic chemicals, the same stuff you'll find in the food, the water, all the same stuff that tanks your testosterone, kills your balls, all that kind of stuff. This one a little bit harder to avoid than the other, the food and water, just because it's, you're breathing air. But there are things you can do to minimize the risk or minimize the shit you're breathing in. So let me show you how you can avoid it. So, how to avoid toxic air. Another fucking slideshow, but easy for me to read out and just give the nitty gritty. So we'll get into it. So yeah, dust and pollution is what makes it toxic for us to breathe. Sure, there's other stuff, but that's the main part of it. Same stuff you find in the food and the water. Toxins, heavy metals, lowers testosterone, damages your lungs, damages your heart, immune system, brain. Gets into your lungs, goes into your bloodstream, or stays in your lungs, travels around the body, stays there, wreaks havoc, all that kind of mess. Pollution. So if you live in a city, obviously you're going to be dealing with some pollution, mostly from cars, obviously from factories and things like that. A bit hard to avoid, but some basic things. Don't run or cycle near busy main roads. If you are going to cycle, maybe wear a mask or something. Just if you're going to go for a run or whatever, just go to the park. I remember I used to run near main road and I've wondered why my heart rate is too high and I can't struggle to breathe, because you're breathing in a bunch of shit from the car exhaust, also the tyres, the rubber burning, all that goes in the air. In the cars as well, keep the windows closed if you're in busy traffic, even though it does come through the car ventilation system, and breathe through your nose. Don't just breathe straight into your mouth. And then dust. So I actually used to think that dust was just skin cells and benign stuff, but it turns out it's not. Dust is one of the most toxic, it's pretty toxic for us to breathe in. So cocktails of phthalates, phenols, fragrances, flame retardants, PFAs, and all this stuff comes in through the window, comes off your electronics, off gases, off of furniture, appliances. We breathe these in daily and can trigger autoimmune conditions, asthma, all this kind of stuff. Recently I saw was these guys from Imperial Uni went into the underground, wore these backpacks to detect pollution, and they found that it was mostly made up of heavy metals, I think like nickel and I can't remember, copper, iron, things like that. You go on the tube underground, your nose full of this black stuff. How is that good for you? Can't be good for you, right? It does build up in the bloodstream, cause inflammation. Not very good to be breathing in, especially if you're doing it every day. Traveling every day, you're breathing that shit in every day, twice a day. You're staying on there for 1 hour, 2 hours. Off-gassing is another thing. So all the kind of electronics and furniture is all chemically treated. Sometimes when you get something new, you get that chemical smell. That's the chemicals freshly off-gassing. They continue to do so after a while, but when you get it fresh is when it's the most potent. All things, paint, furniture, appliances. So try and air things out when you get them, or leave it by a window. When you first get things, a bit hard, things like computers and stuff, but that's why you got to dust up. So solutions, what can you do? Air filters, you can buy on Amazon. Must filter VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Those are like the pesticides and things like that. You get one for your car as well. And you have to be careful, don't get a cheap one. Some of these cheaper made ones, they actually put more pollutants in the environment. So you want to avoid those. Some people recommend having plants around, but you're better off having a proper air filter, because the plants, unless you turn your home into a forest, they're not really going to have a big effect as a filter. Spend more time outdoors in nature. Obviously, you're going to exercise outside, try and go to the park, forest, wherever. Buy non-toxic products like cleaning products, fragrances. It has to say non-toxic. If it says fragrance-free, phthalate-free, don't really mean much. It has to say non-toxic, because to be, by definition, non-toxic, it can't contain toxic chemicals, obviously. Dust regularly with a static or a wet cloth, so like or hoover with a filter, because otherwise the dust is just going to blow up. You're going to breathe it in, get it on your skin. Try and do that regularly. Maybe a little tricky, but avoid taking the tube for long journeys if you can, or those deeper underground routes where you can just feel that stuff in the air. But yeah, a little more difficult, this one, to avoid, but you can do. There's a few things you can do. Just keep things clean, spend more time outdoors, follow those general rules. All these things combined, the food, the water, the air, you make sure this is cleaner than you were doing before, you could notice a big difference to your health.